I have worked as a nurse for many years now, and I can say one thing with confidence. People die in different ways. Some in pain, some in silence, some alone. But there is something they all share, a moment that repeats again and again. It does not come right away, usually at night, when there is no one left to comfort. The person is not looking at me, they are looking somewhere past me, and they say one sentence, almost always the same. After it, the ward becomes very quiet. Even the machines seem to sound different. I have heard it hundreds of times, and every time I think, if only you had said this earlier, because after that sentence, nothing can be taken back. And the worst part, I know that most of us will say it too, just not today. My name is Mark. I am a nurse. 83 years behind me, almost 50 of them in hospitals and hospices. I have held people's hands when the machines grew quieter, and I have seen eyes in which there was no fear left, only clarity. That is why I have the right to speak about regret, not as a sage, as a witness. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago where houses stood neatly in rows, lawns were cut every Saturday, and conversations were short and careful. My father worked in a warehouse, my mother in a school cafeteria. They did not know how to talk about feelings. In our home, silence was considered politeness. If something hurt, endure it. If you were afraid, do not show it. I remember my early years as warm ones. Summer, the smell of gasoline from an old pickup truck, a ball bouncing off the asphalt. But I also remember one night. I was 11. My father did not come home on time. The phone rang late. My mother sat on the edge of a chair and pressed her palm to her mouth. Nothing tragic happened. The car broke down, but that was the first time I felt a cold appear in my chest, as if someone had left a window open. That cold never disappeared. It simply learned how to hide. At school, I was quiet, diligent. I learned to anticipate adults' moods, to guess when it was better to stay silent. It seemed like a useful skill. Back then, I did not know the word anxiety. I thought it was responsibility, caution, sensibility. The first real shocks came later. My grandfather's death. Sudden, in a hospital that smelled of disinfectant and vending machine coffee. I stood in the hallway and watched a nurse come out of the room, take off his gloves, and nod. At that moment, I decided, if I stay close, if I learn, if I keep control, no one will disappear so suddenly. Perhaps that was when I chose this profession. But together with that choice, I took something else with me. Constant tension in my shoulders, the habit of replaying conversations before sleep, the feeling that at any moment something would go wrong and I had to be ready. Anxiety then felt like a low hum, somewhere far away but continuous. It did not shout. It whispered, "Be careful." I enrolled in college, started working as an orderly. I learned quickly and quietly. People said, "You're reliable." And every night, I lay there listening to that hum, which was becoming a little louder. I did not yet know that it would grow, that over the years, it would learn to steer my decisions. I only felt that there was a knot inside me that I did not know how to untie, and it was slowly, stubbornly tightening. Adult life did not begin abruptly. One day, it simply became heavier. I worked in a city hospital, first night shifts, then internal medicine. The work was honest, clear, readings, medications, bodies that either recovered or slowly gave in. There was order in it, and that suited me, because when it is noisy inside, You desperately want everything outside to be precise. Meanwhile, anxiety changed its shape. It was no longer a quiet hum. It became a background. I woke up before the alarm with the thought that I had forgotten something. I reread notes several times. I checked locks, the stove, documents, not out of panic, out of caution, as I explained to myself. I simply could not do otherwise. I got married. Sarah was patient, bright, one of those people who know how to sit in silence without tension. She liked that I was reliable, but she did not see how much effort that reliability cost me. When she suggested going somewhere without a plan, I found reasons to refuse. When she wanted to talk about the future, children, another home, another city, everything inside me tightened, not because I did not want it, but because I did not know how to live without solid walls. Over the years, I began choosing not what I wanted, but what scared me less. I turned down promotions because new responsibility meant new risks. I did not move to other departments, even though I was invited. I stayed where I already knew every sound. Anxiety ruled quietly. It did not forbid. It suggested, this is safer. Gradually, I began to distance myself from people. After shifts, I had no strength for conversations or meetings. I said I was tired. That was true. But the fatigue was not in my legs. It was in my head. Constant replaying of scenarios, imagined mistakes I could have made, conversations that could have gone differently. I lived in future catastrophes and past trivialities that seemed fatal. Sarah felt it. She asked what was wrong with me, and I did not know how to explain it. How do you say, I am anxious all the time, even when everything is fine? I shrugged. We argued quietly, without shouting. There was simply a distance growing between us, one I did not know how to close. Then I transferred to a hospice, not out of calling, out of exhaustion. It was slower there, less running, more silence. I thought it would help. It helped, partially. But at the same time, I found myself among people who looked at their lives without illusions. And that was hard. I began to hear the same thing, not immediately. At first in fragments, a patient asking to call a brother he had not spoken to in 20 years. A woman whispering, I kept postponing everything. A man staring at the ceiling and saying, I was afraid to take risks. They used different words, but the meaning was the same. Regret was not about money, not about work. It was about a life that had never been fully lived. Those words touched me more deeply than I was ready to admit, because I recognized myself. I saw how anxiety devours time, how it convinces you that caution is wisdom, when in fact it is escape. But instead of changing something, I tightened even more, as if by not moving, pain would not find me. Sarah and I separated quietly. Without drama, she said, it feels like I live next to someone who is always on alert, but not with me. I did not argue, because I knew it was true. When she left, the apartment became very quiet, and that silence did not soothe me. It exposed everything I had long been drowning out with work. Anxiety during that period became physical. It lived in my stomach, in my chest, in my jaw. I slept poorly. I ate carelessly. I forgot the last time I had laughed. And at the same time, I kept working, because work was the only place where I knew who I was. One day, a patient I spoke with almost daily died. He was old, a former construction worker, with rough hands and a very calm voice. A few hours before his death, he said, you know, I kept thinking I would still have time to really live, and now there is no time. He did not cry. He simply stated it. I went out into the corridor and stood by the window for a long time. I felt nothing, not even anxiety, only emptiness. That was the breaking point. Not an explosion, not tears, but absence. I suddenly realized that I did not know why to wake up except out of duty, that all my efforts had been aimed at avoiding pain, not at living, and that perhaps I had already missed something important. Not one decision, but years. That night, I came home, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked at my hands for a long time. They knew how to do many things. They held others when they were afraid, and I did not know how to hold myself. There was no light at the end. There was no plan. There was a quiet, deep exhaustion, and the feeling that I had reached the bottom not through a fall, but through a slow, almost imperceptible slide. After the bottom, something does not necessarily begin. More often, it simply continues. I kept going to work, making coffee, straightening the bed. Nothing heroic. And it was precisely in this ordinariness that something began to slowly change. I began to listen more closely to patients, not out of professional curiosity, out of human interest. The greatest regret I see in the dying is not that they were afraid. It is that they took fear for truth. I still have anxiety. It comes when I care. And now I know. It means that I am alive. And that alone is enough to take a step, even if slowly, even if afraid.